Hello, everyone. Today's presentation is about musical notes and scales, which are the basic building blocks of music. Everything we hear in music, melodies, harmonies, and even chords, comes from how notes are organized into scales. Understanding notes and scales helps explain why music sounds the way it does. It also gives musicians a shared system for reading, writing, and creating music. Throughout this presentation, we'll start with the basics of musical notes and then move into different types of scales and how they are used across music styles. By the end, you should have a clearer understanding of how notes and scales work together to form music. Musical notes are the symbols we use to represent sounds in music. Each note has a specific pitch, which tells us how high and low the sound is, and a duration, which tells us how long the note should be held. In Western music, there are 12 unique notes. These notes repeat in higher and lower octaves, creating a full range of sounds. Notes can be natural, sharp, or flat, which slightly raises or lowers their pitch. By combining these notes in different ways, we create melodies, harmonies, and chords. Essentially, understanding notes is the first step in understanding how music works. The musical alphabet consists of just 7 letters: A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. After G, the sequence starts over in a higher pitch. This is what we call the octave. Between these letters, we have sharps and flats, which raise or lower a note by half a step. For example, the note between C and D can be called C sharp or D flat. These are known as accidentals. The musical alphabet is the language of music. It allows musicians to read, write, and communicate music clearly. All scales, chords, and key signatures are built from this simple set of letters and accidentals. To understand scales, we need to know about whole steps and half steps, because these are the building blocks of everyday scale. A half step is the smallest distance between 2 notes in Western music. On a piano, it's the distance from one key to the very next key, whether it's black or white. For example, moving from C to C sharp or from E to F is a half step. A whole step is made up of 2 half steps, on a piano. This means skipping one key in between. For example, going from C to D or from A to B is a whole step. A scale is simply a sequence of notes arranged in a particular pattern of whole and half steps. This pattern determines the scale's sound and mood. For instance, a major scale follows one specific pattern, which gives it a bright and happy tone, while the minor scale has a different pattern, giving it a more somber or emotional sound. Major scales are one of the most common types of scales in music. They are often described as bright, happy, or uplifting. A major scale follows a specific pattern of whole and half steps. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. This pattern gives its distinctive sound. For example, the C major scale consists of the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. You can see that between E and F and between B and C, there is only a half step, while all the other steps are whole steps. Major scales are widely used across classical music, pop, and many other musical genres. They form the foundation of melodies, harmonies, and chords, making them essential for anyone learning the music theory. Minor scales are another fundamental type of scale, and they often sound sad, dark, or emotional compared to major scales. The natural minor scale follows this pattern of whole and half steps. whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. For example, the A natural minor scale is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. There are also harmonic and melodic minor scales, which slightly alter some notes to create more tension or a unique sound. For example, the harmonic minor raises the seventh note to create a dramatic effect. Minor scales are widely used in classical music, jazz, rock, and contemporary music, often giving compositions depth, emotion, in contrast to major scales. Okay, so pentatonic scales are 5-note scales, unlike the 7-note major and minor scales. They are very common in folk, blues, rock, and world music. One reason pentatonic scales are popular is that they avoid semitones, which makes them sound very consonant and harmonious. This also makes them easier to use for improvisation, as it's harder to hit a dissonant note. For example, the C major pentatonic scales consists of C, D, E, G, and A. Notice that F and B are omitted. These are the notes that would create semitones with others in the scale. Pentatonic scales are often used in guitar solos, folk melodies, and vocal improvisation, making them a versatile tool for musicians of all levels. The chromatic scale is a scale that includes all 12 notes in an octave, each separated by a half step. This means it contains every note, both white and black keys, on the piano in order. Chromatic scales are often used to create tension, color, and movement in music. Because they include every possible note, they allow composers and performers to move smoothly between keys or add dramatic runs. For example, starting from C, a chromatic scale would go C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, and then back to C. Chromatic scales are commonly found in jazz improvisation, classical compositions, and modern music, where musicians use them to add richness and complexity to the melodies. An interval is the distance between two notes, and understanding intervals is essential for building chords, harmonies, and melodies. Intervals have specific names depending on how many steps separate the notes. For example, a major third spans 4 half steps. A perfect fifth spans 7 half steps. And an octave spans 12 half steps. Intervals determine the emotional quality of music. For instance, a major third sounds bright and happy, while a minor third sounds sad or tense. Learning intervals also helps with sight reading or ear training and improvisation, because musicians can recognize patterns and predict how notes will sound together. Alright, modes are variations of the major scale, created by starting the scale on a different note while keeping the same sequence of whole and half steps. There are 7 modes. Each mode has a unique sound and mood. The Ionian mode is the same as the major scale, bright and happy. The Dorian mode has a jazzy, soulful feel. Phrygian mode sounds exotic or mysterious. Aeolian mode is the natural minor scale, often somber. Modes are widely used in jazz, rock, and modal music, allowing musicians to create different atmospheres and experiment with melodies while using familiar patterns of notes. And finally, the importance of notes and scales. Notes and scales are the foundations of all music. They shape melodies, harmonies, and rhythms. They give music structure and meaning. By understanding notes and scales, musicians can compose and improvise more effectively because they know which notes work together. They can also communicate musical ideas clearly with other musicians using a shared system. They can also interpret music accurately, whether reading sheet music or playing by ear. In short, Mastering notes and scales is essential for anyone who wants to create, perform, or understand music at a deeper level. Without this knowledge, it would be nearly impossible to make sense of how music is put together. Hopefully, you've learned a lot in this video. If you have any more questions for me, please let me know. But aside from that, I hope you have a great day.